Our next speaker is Heather Cameron. Heather is an educator and healer of domestic violence. She inspires female victims and survivors of domestic violence to break through their fears and limiting beliefs so that they can live more fully, freely, and ideally. Today, Heather is presenting on Beating Domestic Violence, 3 ways to live more fully, freely, and ideally. Please join me in welcoming Heather to the stage.
On average, one woman every 9 days is murdered by a current or former partner in Australia. Have you ever feared for your life? Have you ever remained in a toxic relationship? Have you ever suffered from low self-esteem? I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I've got you. I too have experienced all of this and far more. Far too often, I've found myself in moments of quiet desperation, with little or no compassion, understanding, let alone guidance and support. No more. I've taken my knowledge, skills, and over 27 years of lived experience as a domestic violence victim and as a survivor. I've now created a 6-week program to inspire female victims and survivors of domestic violence to break through their fears and limiting beliefs so they can live more fully, freely, and ideally. 1 in 6 women have experienced domestic violence by a current or former partner. 75% of victims of domestic violence reported the perpetrator as male. Overall, 1 in 5 women have experienced sexual violence. And it's costing the country $21.7 billion each year. It was December 2013, the beginning of one of the most terrifying years of my life. A time where I fled our family farm in a remote rural area, New South Wales. Drove my kids 500 kilometres for fear of my own life and my children's safety. This fearful flee was my desperate attempt to escape over 27 years as a victim of domestic violence at the mercy of the former husband. Let's call him Dick. It was one thing for him to taunt and torment me, but there's no way this ill treatment was something I was going to allow him to inflict upon my kids. Dick had left a voicemail demanding that I pack the kids' bags and have the car ready. He was coming to get them. This was very uncharacteristic of him, as he'd never shown any interest in the kids, had never taken them anywhere. So why now? For what purpose? Would I ever see my kids again? In my panic-stricken state, I stopped at 2 police stations in a desperate attempt to report Dick and to get an apprehended violence order, AVO, issued, only to be turned away as I didn't manage domestic violence issues. What was I to do? Who was I to turn to? And where was I to go? Not even a government department charged with prevention, detection, and of public nuisance and crimes would support me. I was in total and utter disbelief. And to aggravate the situation, I got word that Dick had reported the family car stolen. So now the police were on the lookout. Again, I asked myself, what was I to do? Who was I to turn to? And where was I to go? One of my sisters, who understood my fearful flee, she'd been in a similar situation only years earlier, was there to support me. My sister connected me with a woman who supports victims, female victims and survivors of domestic violence, who kindly arranged that I meet a female police officer in the town in which I'd sought interim refuge, a town of 40,000 people. And yet even she could not find a local shelter or housing for the kids and I, as they were all full. Wow, there's so many women just like me, fearful victims of domestic violence, seeking escape, seeking refuge, living, dreaming of living more fully, freely and ideally. We remained in hiding as I continued to fear for my own life and my kids' safety until the AVO was issued. Dick was capable of anything, and I mean anything. In February 2014, the AVO was eventually issued. The AVO kept Dick out of the house, but he still haunted me daily, as he was permitted on the farm to get anything he needed for the machinery business. Many times when out feeding the animals, I'd hear a car coming and I'd run for the house. Felt like a prisoner in my own home, with no certainty of when it would all end. I later received an email, a retrieval order for the kids. My stomach churned, and again I asked myself, what was I to do? Who was I to turn to? I rang my solicitor and she assured me not to worry, that I was the primary carer. Whilst I trusted her word and that kids would be okay, I was dealing with much more than that. The farm, the aeroplane, the machinery business. The phone didn't stop ringing with finance companies and banks, chasing payments. We owed $8 million to 7 major banks and finance companies, and I desperately wanted to save my kids' home. While Dick was busy telling everybody I had a mental health problem and gone mad, I was busily working together with my solicitor and the receivers to beat this domestic violence situation once and for all. And I knew the only way to do it was to stand up and fight for what was right. This was the only way that I was going to fulfill my dream of living more fully, freely and ideally. I'd remained in a toxic relationship where I was told I was fucking useless for far too long. And with the knowledge that nothing changes if nothing changes, and that I need to be the change that I want to see in the world, I embraced my never give up attitude, my wicked sense of humour, and I set about saving my kids' home, the only home they knew. After 24 hearings over 3.5 years, in June 2017, I finally got the verdict. I won. And I saved my kids' home. And more than that, my life was now DV-free. This is resonating with you, and you're ready to break through your fears and limiting beliefs so that you can live more fully, freely and ideally. Reach out and let's book your free 30-minute discovery call.